Thank you, friends. Thank you for joining us here today to listen to my topic. Quite a relevant topic indeed, but let me disappoint Sasha. I will not give you medicine cure-all diseases recipe. I will not give you the fish, I will give you the fish and rod, so to speak. So by raise of hands, how relevant this is the topic for you? By raise of hands, who are the parents? Those of you who fight with their kids because of the gadgets. So half are not fighting because you're desperate. Who is desperate already and gave up? I'll be honest with you. As a parent, I was concerned with this because my kid from green years was all into technologies and computers, and while he was small I was somehow handling it using a traditional approach. I was restricting, I was forbidding, I was hiding. But as soon as the kid grew up, became vocal and started asking questions, I learned that I cannot answer those questions. When I tell him, don't sit in front of the screen, it will hurt your eyesight. Then he asked me, why? Why that? What exactly happens to my eyesight when I look at the screen? And I recognize that I have no clue how to respond. I'm telling him, you can't play this game. They tear off their limbs. That's blood is flowing out. I said, that's scary. He says, no, that's fun. I said, no, but that will affect you. He asked me, why? How come? I have no answer to that, and trying to figure out what should be the answers, I went where? Weirdly enough, to internet and started Googling it, trying to figure out whether gadgets and technologies cause the abuse, and is it something worth further studying? Addiction or good? And when I started Googling it, I learned the answers of keynote speakers of this event. Dima Zitser wrote this article on the Snob e-magazine to forbid or not to. And Dima emotionally explains quite well what our parents' fears stem from, but that's Dima's take on it, while I tried to find facts and proof and evidence. And Dima Zitser claims that there are no justifications, we're just afraid. And for us, for parents, that's quite natural. But that's not only his point of view. There was a separate study conducted in the States. The Line Organization on the Crimes Against Kids. Sexual abuse, psychological violence, and they study many other topics as well, including how internet impacts kids. They tried to bring together the evidence of the last 15 years to recognize whether the parents' fears are grounded and we should be scared of internet. And the study demonstrated that never before our small kids and our teenagers were at the high stage of well-being in the past as now. So this fear that computer games and internet and other virtual devices and phenomena make their life worse and more dangerous are just not true. At that time, this fear hurt me, and it was labeled juvenile, compressed of two words, juvenile and paranoia. Paranoia being the state of not understanding our kids and being afraid of them, as simple as that. What is this juvenile caused? Here's the brief list of bullets that explain why parents always are afraid of their kids, not only in the age of technologies. When they started printing books, and those printed books were accessible by a large number of people, their fears were the same. French philosopher Voltaire once stated that reading is dangerous for young, immature minds. Big differences between us and them, which is true because the circumstances of life that they live in are so much different from ours. We are more similar to our parents in the way of life, to our parents, than they are similar to us. This is an eternal conflict of parents and kids. Remember this cartoon about the bug that was making the statement, "Ooh, you youngsters," sounding as if it's something strange and unfathomable. Age shifts, nostalgia. We always believe that our childhood was always better than that of our kids. Exploitation of social problems. Something that is so well explained by the system of using schools. The biggest opponents of using gadgets in school and life come from two categories: medical doctors and school teachers. Strangely enough, these are the two most socially sensitive groups to address the problems of healthcare and education. Medical doctors and teachers appeal to the dangers of modern technologies, just using it as an excuse to raise their own issues. Political demagogy. It's not yet relevant here, but in the States, politicians are become populist when they discuss computer and TV violence just to heat up their voters. Stranger danger is a fear of third parties on the internet. We are afraid that somewhere deep in the internet our kids would be attacked by a lurking maniac who would obviously suggest something bad to them, and an ever-increasing generational gap. This is how they try to describe that the technologies make the gap between generations ever so deeper.
By saying the digital immigrants, which is us, the adults, they live in the digital world, and we immigrated into that, and we try to integrate ourselves in it. Those of you who try to limit the use of gadgets and internet, please raise your hands. I'd like to recommend you another interesting article by Ekaterina Murashova. She's a psychotherapist from Russia. So when kids are on vacation in summer, when they are on their summer break, she is doing research. So she once decided to see how the ideas of parents correlate regarding the time, correlate with reality. They looked at the time, how much the kids spent with the gadgets. So she asked these patients, the children, to honestly mention how much time during a certain period they were using gadgets. And then she pretty much aggregated the data. And then she asked parents to do the same. So there were 3 groups of parents eventually. Strict parents, that's group 1, who strictly restricted the time of their children spent online, the time when they were using gadgets. Group 2, those who fought, who tried to persuade the kids, maybe to punish them, but they did not fully succeed in this. And then group 3, who don't care, who never restricted the kids in anything. The kids could spend their entire time playing computer games. So then she compared these numbers with everything that the kids mentioned, and in reality, the children of those who prohibit the most strict, the children of the most strict parents spend the most time with computers. So parents believe that their kids spend 6 to 7 hours per week, but in fact 27. How does this happen? Well, they go to school, they play with friends' gadgets. When mom was asleep, I turned the computer on, and so on and so forth. So they just lie to the parents, they cheat, and they bypass all those bans and prohibitions. Regarding the second category, those who occasionally fight, this number is a little bit lower, but not significantly. The expectations of parents were much closer because they thought that the kids spend about 15 to 17 hours online, but in fact it was 25. And only those who don't care, the situation was different. The parents thought that kids spent more time than in fact they spent playing games. So Katerina is not drawing any conclusions from here, but she is showing obvious things. Those bans are not solving the problem. Kids want this, they like it, and they will do this, no matter how much you prohibit. Now, to choose another path apart from prohibitions, you need to fight your fear. You need to do something about it. You should not panic. And you can do this only by one method. What do we fear mostly? We fear something we do not know, and what we know very little about. So you just have to find that information. This is something I decided to do, and this is something I wanted to tell you about. Usually, what do we worry about when we think about use of gadgets by the children? We worry about their health, physical, mental. We worry about their safety. We worry about their academic results in school. I intentionally left a column here because this is not an exhaustive list of things that make us worried, but after numerous talks to the parents, I came to the conclusion that these fears are the most widespread. To objectively answer the question about the gadgets and how bad they are for eyes and ears, you have to learn to differentiate between the sources of information, because now we live in this era of post-truth where you can find at least two opposite answers to one and the same question. Oftentimes it's hard to verify which one is actually true. So apart from just differentiating truth from the lies, it's important to understand how things look like in reality so that you could manage the situation and control it. It's not a secret that we are constantly under pressure from grandpas, grandmas, doctors and teachers and friends and acquaintances. And to fight all this, you need to know where the truth is and what's false. So it's important to be able to draw the line. You need to be able to think critically. Oftentimes, when you meet some publications online or in paper publications dealing with gadgets or IT, they oftentimes have or don't have features that can help you identify the source as a trustworthy source. And I came across the situation where it's not just every second or third publication matches this set of features or criteria. You have to know the first-hand source of information, because again, in our country nobody does research regarding the impact of internet or gadgets against children, because they don't have the resources. All this research is done abroad, and usually the results are published in English. And oftentimes, these publications are based on research data, which has been published some time ago in some of the research magazines. And there are some magazines which are reputable, some are less reputable. Before, not a single researcher or doctor could publish the results of their work without getting peer review from colleagues, because they have to approve, or if they don't approve, then you don't get published. Today, online, any doctor, any researcher can publish any paper. They just have to start a blog using one of the available platforms online. And the sources are very important. Also, it's important to read the criticism. As I told you before, in the world of post-truth, each and every opinion has supporters and opponents. To make up an opinion about something, you have to know not just one thing, one opinion, but you have to also know about the opposite views. And of course, it's important to be knowledgeable about the matter. And in the beginning of every research paper dealing with anything, there is an abstract describing briefly the results of the study. Now, why all these things are important? I'm showing an example here how they manipulate parents, how you can manipulate the public by adding to facts. This is in Russian. It says, what smart people do when the rest are hooking up their kids with gadgets and tablets. This is about Silicon Valley. And it says that when dumb people give kids iPads, the experts from Silicon Valley give kids or send kids to schools where they play with wooden toys, and they do this because they know how bad those gadgets are for the kids. Now, I read this article and I had my doubts. So I decided to verify the publication based on the primary source, and I found this article in New York Times. And the title is different. A Silicon Valley school that doesn't compute. Now, there is a school, a Waldorf school in Silicon Valley, where they pay tuition $25,000 annually, and there are no computers. And they say that this school also has some kids from top managers from Silicon Valley, one or two, because this is a Silicon Valley and there are so many top managers. And that's it. But somehow Russian language internet turned hysterical. We can use another example of a very popular publication. In the US press, it was published by a doctor, a psychotherapist, last name Kardarash, and he owns a clinic for drug addicts. So he published an article, and it was translated the generation of tweakers. So they were looking at the results of the MRI of the brain of drug addicts and children who play computer games online. And it appears allegedly that the scans, the pictures, they match. They're pretty much the same. Then the doctor concluded in his article that gadgets is new heroin. And everything kind of looked honest. We have a doctor, we have a research paper, and it kind of was published. So I decided to read the criticism, and the criticism say that's true if you will compare child's MRI picture playing Minecraft and the same picture from a drug addict who is using heroin, you will see a lot of matches, but it also matches the picture which you can make when someone's eating a chocolate. Because any kind of activity that results in pleasure for a person results in injection of a dopamine, and hence the cortex is pictured like this. Now there is another interesting publication. Computer games increase the intellect of children, while social networks decrease that intellect. 15,000 Australian students participated in the study. They all were surveyed about what they do more, computer games or spending time in social networks. And it appeared that those who play computer games have higher grades. Math, English, science, compared to those who use social networks. And this article and the title of it was very simple. Higher grades for those who play computer games, lower grades for those who spend time in social networks. Now, who do you believe? Who do you trust? There is a reputable organization that has already completed all this verification work. They investigated, they studied all the available evidence as of today, and based on this, they developed recommendations. One of them is developed by the US Academy of Pediatrics, and they publish recommendations what to do for the parents, what kind of restrictions impose, not impose, and how justified that is. Also, There is another interesting resource which simplifies things because it is issued like, little instructions what to do and what not to do, and this is what they do at Children's Clinic in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, these are the recommendations from the Pediatrics Academy. They were issued in 2018, and they were recommending the following for children between 5 and 18 to use those gadgets not more than 2 hours per day. Then they started researching how well people follow it. They realized that 72% of Americans don't follow it. They ignore it because they just cannot control their children. They cannot restrict them to 2 hours per day. So they realized that it was just not possible. So you can see that they are not talking about 2 or 3 hours or half an hour. There is nothing about it. Why? Because there is no good justification. There is no research proving that gadgets have a bad influence against your posture, against your eyesight and hearing and your state of mind. And this is another research from All About Vision. And this is where you can read all about the harm that computer screens have regarding your vision. So there is one fact that says that gadgets emit blue light. That's a fact. And this blue light makes your body think that it's daytime. And hence, the body starts producing less of melatonin and you lose that desire to sleep. I fall asleep all the time in front of the PC screen, and I have my doubts regarding the mechanism of this, but that seems to be a fact, somehow, and proven. It's proven. Now, speaking about blue light again, they say that it destroys your retina, which is a part of your eye. So there are patients who received an implant, an eye implant. And there were 2 different implants. One had a filter against blue light emission, some had already a filter in it. So 5 years later, those patients were checked, and those who had a filter, the eyesight retained better. Those who did not have a blue light filter had their eyesight deteriorated. So that's how they concluded that the blue light impacts your eyesight. Now, what's the most powerful source of blue light in the world? It's the sun. All of us, every day, are exposed to very serious emission of blue light, and our eye tries to somehow filter it out. So how do we understand how much a gadget emits of blue light? There is no way to find out right now. Now look at these little guys. So they are destroying their posture, and that's obvious. But they're not using gadgets. They're using things that we are trying to give to kids now. Just go read a book. That's what you're saying, right? Stop using Facebook. This is what doctors recommend. How realistic is this? What do you think? As I said in the beginning, it's not the problem of our time. Just have a look at this picture. 300 years ago, parents had problems as well. Again, they were trying to establish the right posture. Facebook started asking the same question. They spent about $1 million to study this, and they said, really, it's not about gadgets or the time you spend using them. Problem is why you use them. Nevertheless, the psychiatrists actually were able to get their goal achieved, and the dependence from online computer games is now one of the many diagnoses established by the WHO, and a lot of doctors were against it, and a lot of researchers were against it. Mostly those were psychotherapists and psychologists, but the psychiatrists actually won over the psychologists. And officially in the US, at least as far as I know, you can be diagnosed with dependence or addiction to computer games. The statement that these games lead to excessive violence is not true. There has been so many research, and none of that research found any correlation. Now, why those opponents are not happy? Of course, they all understand that if we have a person who is living through difficult times in life and ran out of money, wife left, so he can find consolation in computer games, maybe chocolate, maybe heroin. But when a child plays computer games online, oftentimes it's not dependence or addiction. But the doctors now have an opportunity to say you are sick, so you need to be cured, and you're gonna play only 2 hours a day, not more. So we call it stigmatizing. This is when, from the times of crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the nail that they used to crucify him was called stigma. So that's how people are stigmatized now. They say you are sick with this addiction. A US researcher has published a book about this. It says it's complicated. So she was looking into this issue. She was trying to see what kids do in social networks and whether the presence in social networks is an attempt to escape reality. The same question was investigated in Russia. They were surveying teenagers, and they realized that kids are not using virtual reality to replace an actual reality. They use it to augment their actual reality. So we never had a chance to safely test a new haircut before going to school. Like I remember myself, I was putting on new pants, going to school and thinking, am I gonna be ridiculed? Today everything is very simple. You take a picture in new pants and you Instagram it. And then in 1 hour you will know what people think about you and your pants. And then you make a decision. Are these good pants or are they not good? Right, not everyone is gonna see you in new pants if you use your method. If your profile is open only to friends, why not? I can only have 5 of the most preferable friends. So this researcher is showing that things are not that bad. And the last question which I wanted to highlight, whether they are really studying in there. And practically all computer games are network-based games, online games where you can multiplayer online, and at the same time you can play in teams, in groups, and whatnot. Researchers say that modern games will replace social networks. And one of the advantages will mean that there will be no parents in the social networks. In the US, Facebook is a social network for all people. And I'm an old person too now, I guess. Because kids find opportunities to communicate online where there are no adults, so that they could protect their privacy, so that they could have a life where no one intervenes. And in games, it's just happening very quickly and efficiently. Even if you want to participate in this game, even if you become a part of the team with your kid, they will quickly shut you down. Or they will ban you. Even if you pretend like you're a child and you will try to act accordingly, or trust me, they will figure you out very quickly. This kind of socialization has not been dreamed of in any school, because they don't see you personally, they don't talk to you pretty much, but by the way you move, when playing a game, they will understand whether you are friend or foe, and they can figure you out very quickly. Now, speaking about how they develop training courses, I'm not going to tell you about this right now, but in Sweden or Canada, they use Minecraft to teach physics or math and other subjects. But the beauty of the sandbox games, that's the game where there are no preset rules. You can do whatever you like. So Minecraft is a sandbox game. No one tells you that if you build this in this way, then there will be consequences. Nope. The players do this themselves and create the rules themselves. It's a copy of life in the virtual world where nothing threatens you. There are no F grades, no one's yelling or anything like this. And many people believe that sandbox games is a new school. Thank you so much. I have a question about safety. So safety is a symptom of juvenile, or there are some rules for children regarding safety online?
Look, you can come up with different safety rules, but danger has to be gauged and measured somehow. Before you come up with any rules, you need to identify what is the danger, and this danger could not be properly assessed or evaluated. Researchers try to apply statistics for this. One statement is internet is dangerous because sexual maniacs lurking in them, that potentially a kid could become the victim of a sexual maniac. But from the time internet came into existence, the researchers see what is the dynamic of the statistics of crimes of such maniacs against kids, and then they compare it with the average number of hours they stay in the internet. So these are two diverging curves, actually. And yes, the rates of crimes against kids drops down annually by 30% in the United States, but the number of hours they spend on the internet multiplies couple of fold. Never before such statistics on the well-being of kids and teenagers were ever present. On the level of sexual crimes, of teenage pregnancies, dropping out of schools, even grades, yes. So, from those standpoint, the American generation today is much better than previously, despite of internet. So the question is, well, how does it affect them then? That's a guesswork, but there will be no measurements because statistics clearly demonstrate that no. Neither sexual maniacs, no stranger dangers, not the increase of the rate of violence are increasing.